Hello, people of the party. Ryan here from the Hex and Bones Club, and today I want to talk about scenario-less solo games in Frostgrave. This is the second edition currently. So here's a quick rundown of how I frequently play solo Frostgrave. So most of this is going to go hand in hand with the Perilous Dark supplement that if you don't have and you're interested in playing Frostgrave solo, this is what you need. It's awesome. There's a bunch of tables and stuff. So there's my plug for this. If you don't have this, go buy this. First and foremost. But sometimes I just want to chuck dice and cast spells. No scenario, no objectives, just a good old-fashioned treasure heist. So I found that the following rules really let you do that kind of thing. So before I dive into the solo play steps, I want to throw up a visual aid that I use when I mentioned talking about the D20 pointing, which you might already understand this, but here is a visual aid of that. When you roll a D20, it makes a triangle. So use the top point of that triangle wherever it's pointing as the directioning system that I'm going to talk about here. So first thing you want to do, actually let's bounce over. I'll throw up a little slideshow here. This is a build of my current 4x4 Frostgrave table, all 3D printed, and it's been a lot of fun. But so the first thing you want to do trying to play a solo game like this is you set up your warband as Frostgrave standard. Or use an existing one, or whatever you've got. So that's you got a wizard, you got an apprentice, and you've got your full warband. Step number 2 is to set up your table. So you're not using a scenario here, so you can go as wild as you want to with a bunch of terrain pieces that maybe you haven't got to use, or you got something new, or whatever. But just go nuts with your terrain. Number 3, start off the game by randomly placing 2 treasure tokens on the table. And the way that I will do this is that I will put the treasure token directly in the center of my table, and then I'll roll that D20 using that arrow method there and move it up until I hit a piece of terrain. Maybe I'll put it up on the terrain or whatever, and I'll roll the dice several times to randomly move that treasure piece somewhere around there. After that, you do the same thing with kind of populating the table with monsters. Do the same deal. I use the random encounters table, and that's in the core rulebook on page 177 for the second edition. Depending on how big my table is, as you can see there, that table is 4x4, so it's large for a solo, and so sometimes I'll put 6 or 8 monsters in there to really try to amp up the danger here. But use the same placing pattern for those at first. Put them in the middle, roll the dice, and just kind of let the dice determine where they're going to go. So now we're on to step number 5, which is now that the treasures and monsters are set, you do the same D20 rolling strategy to pick an edge for your warband. If you haven't caught on yet, everything revolves around rolling that D20 and just going where it points you to. So, use your best judgment here. And in the spirit of the game, you don't want to spawn your warband directly right next to one of your treasures, as that's the objective. But you're playing by yourself; it's your prerogative. You do what you want. Step 6. Now you just start a standard game of Frostgrave, and you use the Perilous Dark supplement rules for the turn order, which is number 1, the wizard goes. Number 2, the elite monsters go, and Frostgrave defines elite monsters as monsters that have a +5 to their fight and greater, or greater than 20 hit points. Number 3, your apprentice goes. Number 4 is the monster phase. That's when the rest of the monsters will activate and start moving towards trying to attack you or defend their treasure or whatever. And then finally, number 5 is your soldiers phase. And when you're moving the monsters around, there is the monster action flow chart in the core rulebook, so I'm not going to rehash that, but essentially you look to see, is the creature already in combat? If it is, then it's going to fight. If it's not, can it see any member of the warband, based on the line of sight? And if it is, it will move there. And if it can't see anything, if the monster can't see anything and it doesn't know where the warband might be, sometimes I'll play it up, and then maybe they can hear it if something loud has happened. They'll start moving that direction, that kind of thing. But otherwise, you use the same random direction thing that we've been talking about, which is actually in the core Frostgrave rulebook. That you roll the d20 and you use that pointer. So After you've done a standard Frostgrave turn, then you roll on the random table encounters, or the random encounter table in the core rulebook again to populate your monsters. And then usually I will do another random roll to determine which edge of the table that they're going to spawn at. Sometimes you can put spawn points across your board, to have them come out of a building or, whatever like that. And so that one also, depending on your table size, and maybe if your warband has just absolutely crushed these monsters, the existing monsters on the table, maybe you want to roll multiple times on the encounter table and start filling your table up more. And that is essentially how it works. It makes this, the more that you roll on the encounter monster tables, the more monsters come in, and it starts to put some pressure on getting the treasure and getting out. Admittedly, I've played a few of these where I'm just a monster slayer. I just ignore the treasure and I just kill as many monsters as I can. That's kind of the cool thing about playing solo, is that you can do whatever you want to, whatever you think is fun. But you can just keep spawning those monsters, and it puts a little constraint on, how quickly you're wanting to move and get out of here. Especially if you're playing with a campaign warband, and you need to keep your guys alive. So that is essentially it. This whole video boils down to rolling that d20 for everything, just to randomize everything, fill your table up. And as you can see, I've got some of the build that I have over there. I'll be making another video with more detailed stuff on that, but that's a 4x4 build, all 3D printed stuff, and there's a couple shots in there from a few of the solo games that I've played. But it is not as sad as it sounds to play Frostgrave solo. It's actually a pretty good time. And that is all I've got for today, so I'll see you around.